very much. Thank you. Yes, I am David Batstone, and I am not for sale. It has always not been the case. In fact, I was a venture capitalist for several years. And it was working in San Francisco as a venture capitalist. My territory was the Scandinavian region. One day in San Francisco, though, I discovered that my favorite restaurant in San Francisco was the center of a human trafficking ring that had brought over 400 teenagers from the area of Bangalore, India, into the United States for the purpose of forced labor. First forced to work in the restaurant, then taken out to fruit and vegetable fields, into brothels, and to construction crews in Northern California. My own backyard slavery. It was such a shock to me that I had to figure out how this could happen. It was a sliding door for me in many respects. How could I walk away from that, or do I walk towards it? So I decided to take a year leave of absence from my venture bank and from my university and travel around the world and understand how slavery works in the 21st century. I followed the money, essentially. I went from San Francisco to Bangalore. I went from Los Angeles, where I had discovered over 100 Thai women had been forced to work in a sewing factory and sleep there every night, locked in, get up the next morning, and sew again. From Houston to Peru, from Washington, D.C. to Cameroon, Africa. Follow the money and follow the trail. What I learned is that trafficking, the sale of human beings, is a $32 billion industry every year. It rivals guns and drugs as an illicit activity where money is made off of the criminal abuse of others. That's larger than Starbucks, Google, and Nike combined every year. It involves 30 million people. And I wanted to do something about it. So my first trip was to Thailand. After I had already gone through India, had visited Bangalore, tracked the women who had been brought into San Francisco, my next vision was to go to Thailand, and there I met this woman, Krunam. Krunam was an artist. She wasn't looking to fight trafficking any more than I was, but one day she found young kids who had been sleeping by the aqueducts that surround Chiang Mai, her town. When she got to know these kids, she found out that they had been trafficked from China, from Cambodia, from Laos, and that they had been brought there to be sold in the commercial sex industry. She was so incensed when she learned this was happening. That night, she went into a brothel, a child brothel in Chiang Mai. Saw two little girls and a boy talking to adult clients. She ran up to the bar, grabbed them, and ran out. It's not the most sophisticated intervention strategy, but she was passionate. The next night, she grabbed two more kids. Now, when I met Krunam, she had 27 kids and no plan. They were living on this property, the grass hut roofs and really dirt floors in the north of Thailand, in the area of the Golden Triangle. While I was there, I was so moved that I decided to do something more than simply write about it or tell the world about it. My heart opened up, and I decided that I would help these kids. And I said, listen, Krunam, I'm going to write a book about this year experience, and then with the proceeds, I'll build a house for you and your kids here in northern Thailand. So I went back to San Francisco, and I started writing my book. I was in chapter 2, and I get a call from Krunam. She says, 2 things have happened, David. One is that our house burned down with a grass roof. The second is I now have 53 kids. And I said, okay, listen, I'll build 2 houses for you. All right, so this better be one damn good book. So I'm going back with new fervor, writing this book, and I'm in the final chapter, and I get a call from Krunam. It's now 88 kids she's rescued. I'm like, slow down on the rescues already. And so I knew I needed help, so I started asking people to give me money. I started a foundation called Not for Sale, and we built a village for these kids. And today it's fantastic. I just came from Thailand a few weeks ago. These little kids that I met nearly 9-10 years ago are now going to university. They're finishing the best high schools in the country. 150 kids at any one time. And it was inspiring for me, but I began to think about the fact that I had really opened my heart, but I shut down my brain. I had tried to, be at the end of a river, pulling bodies out. They're drowning, they're flailing. And that's great. That's compassion. That's mercy. We're wired that way, and we need to respond or we kill ourselves. But on the other hand, I had to go up the river and find out why so many kids and women and men were being enslaved in the world today, and where do we stop it upstream? How do I turn my brain on? Because slavery is something that is a part of a cycle. And how do we attack slavery at its roots? Here I built companies as a venture capitalist. I use resources, network, I use funds, finances. But when it came to charity, I'd ask people to give me a gift. And I'd go away, and a year later I'd ask them to give me more money. See, charity is a very funny industry. Imagine here in Sweden, you have the postcode lottery, right? You have a pile of funds that gets distributed every year. And then I, as a charity, compete with other charities. And if I win, it's wonderful. Great. The children in Africa are going to get AIDS money. I get to get money for slavery, right? There's something wrong with that model. But how do we build a different kind of business model? Particularly when I started to look at the human trafficking industry, and I saw that it was a $32 billion a year U.S. industry, but all of the anti-trafficking agencies combined had a budget of $100 million. It's David and Goliath. Who's going to win that battle? So what's that new business model look like? How do we reinvent charity? This is not just about trafficking. It's about AIDS. It's about water. It's about the greenhouse effect. How do we reinvent the way we approach it? That our heads start doing the feeling and our hearts start doing the thinking. How do we unite those? And that was my goal. Not for Sale was also working in Peru. We had met a woman that had rescued kids, and we built a shelter there as well. And we literally started to go upstream because we found a lot of these kids were coming from the Amazon area of Peru. And we wanted to figure out what it would mean to address it upstream. So what I decided was to do something a bit different, reinvent the model. I have been going to these events like the Clinton Global Initiative and these other world leader events. And the first time you go, of course, you're like so impressed with the speeches. You go, wow, the world's going to change. And then you go back a year later, you go, wait, what happened? We're doing the same speeches, but nothing changed. Well, what's Davos? Davos is a little town in Switzerland I never heard of before till I heard about the World Economic Forum. I live in a little town no one's heard of. It's called Montera. So I decided to have the Montera Circle. I invited the 50 most influential together people I knew. I didn't know any of you, so I didn't invite you. But, be like the founder of Twitter, a star baseball player for the San Francisco team, the guy who owns Weetabix and All Saints. So put people together, say, look, for the next 24 hours, I want you to brainstorm with me, just as if you were starting a company. How would you address the problem of Peru? What would that look like, and what's the business model? This is a film that I showed them to get them thinking.
The Peruvian Amazon is one of the most ecologically wealthy places on the entire planet, and yet the people are some of the poorest in the world. There's something wrong with that picture.
The communities in the Peruvian Amazon are 7 hours from the nearest city upriver. The only way to get there is by boat, and the community members can't even afford to own a boat.
They don't have access to marketplace. They don't have healthy jobs in their own community. So traffickers come in.
It's happening, and primarily because there's a lack of economic opportunities for work.
When we looked at the Amazon region, we saw rich resources. We saw people who desperately wanted to work and build a new future. We knew there had to be a solution to the problem. The only question is, what would that solution be?
Part of the solution we came up with was relatively simple. It was to provide villagers a boat. But what happens when the boat wears out? How do we create not a charity-based model, but a sustainable model?
It's creating jobs. Unfortunately, to create jobs is a pretty complex process. You need to engage the communities themselves. You need to engage local businesses that are creating products. You need to engage international retailers like supermarkets. And you also need to engage consumers to understand why it's important and why they should be buying these types of products. What we came up with was an incredible idea that would link all of those actors together. And what we came up with was REBBL.
So put yourself in the room. You've been invited to help come up with a new model, a business that would empower 77 tribes in the Amazon. What do you think of? Well, it's really remarkable what came out of it.
So we were joking around and we said, what if we locked all of the smartest business leaders that we know in one room and had them solve all of our problems for us? And that's pretty much what we did. We gathered top leaders from business and culture, and we broke them into small groups, and we asked them to compete to come up with the best business model to create jobs in the Amazon.
One of the most extraordinary groups in terms of the range of characters in it included a lawyer, it included the founder of an online healthcare company, it included an agronomist, and a baseball player.
These are large people in large corporations, and they're brilliant minds, and they've got brilliant ideas. I didn't go to college. I signed out of high school. I don't have a business degree in anything. I was out of place, I really was. I didn't feel like I had anything to offer.
The guy from the online health company started to look on Google and found out that there was this unusual plant called cat's claw that came out of the Amazon.
And I was sitting there and I was drinking tea. I remember I was getting into this tea concept, and I just said, hey, can you do an herbal tea? Like, can you make this a tea? And we all just looked at each other, and we were like, man, that's actually an interesting thought.
It's a tea company that sources ingredients in the Amazon and creates jobs. That's the idea that eventually became REBBL.
Within an hour, we created this whole business idea around this tea, and then we had to present it, and they made me present it, and I don't know anything about presenting that kind of stuff.
And REBBL won because it was so practical in creating jobs for the people in that region. It linked a consumer up with a producer, someone who wanted to be involved in changing the world with the people who most needed that change.
The next thing I know, I'm getting stuff in the mail, and Dave asking me if I want to invest in the tea. And I actually was like, what tea? At first. And he's like, the tea idea you came up with. And I'm like, you're actually running with that? No, I got bragging rights. It was my idea,
So over the next 18 months, from the beginning of this idea, then we went out to set up a company. But how do you set up a company? You don't ask a social worker who always wanted to be involved in business to create a tea. You go out and find the best damn beverage maker in the country, and you do what every other beverage company does. You offer them a salary and stock equity that gives them a reward and incentive to build a great company. Except this company, if it's successful, it's going to create jobs and money for the people who can be changed. So after 18 months, we came up with REBBL, roots, extract, berry, bark, leaves. Be a rebel. Don't drink the same old crap everybody else drinks. Don't drink Coca-Cola, right? Be a rebel. And so this now, if you go forward from early 2013, we're now in over 5,000 stores across the United States. We've won awards as the most innovative beverage. Thank you very much. The most innovative beverage. We're seeing the impact back in the Amazon. We're sourcing ingredients that are just wonderful health benefits. So for the consumer, this is good for you, but it's great for the world. So what does that look like in that context? Now let's move it to somewhere else. Can this work again? Can we really start generating companies that really are charities, but charities that are really operating as companies? Well, let's go to another place, and this is Amsterdam. Amsterdam, the red light district. Many of you probably have visited there. We began 5 years ago working in the streets of Amsterdam, getting to know the girls who were behind the windows. We discovered that these young girls, 3 out of 4 of them come from Eastern Europe. They're not young Dutch girls who just decided to, join a brothel one day. 3 out of 4 are coming from Eastern Europe. So we started a soup company. We went out and found the best soup chefs in the country. We made great soups, and our first customers were the sex workers behind the windows. Our second customers were the police force, the precincts. Great demographics, sex workers and police, if you're going to start a company. As that began to do a texting service, they could text, we want a ginger soup. Can you deliver it between 3 and 3:30 when we're not seeing clients, Johns? then we wanted them to think of themselves as customers. They started to buy soup. Well, the wonderful thing happened is that as we grew that, we needed caterers and we needed chefs. So we started a culinary school in partnership with Jamie Oliver's operation in Amsterdam. And there these women had the opportunity to leave the life. They had an option. They had a sliding door presented to them. And as great as that grew, the largest chain of grocery stores in Holland and Belgium called Hema, 700 stores, came to us and said, we want to commercialize your soup. We need more chefs. We need more caterers. I'm really proud that on Friday of this last week, the mayor of Amsterdam delivered to us a former brothel, and we turned it into a store where we're selling soup, where we're selling not-for-sale coffee, where there are young girls who at one point, not more than months ago, were selling their bodies to survive, could sell products because they were empowered for another kind of life. What this looks like is being able to compete with Coca-Cola. I got my own beverage. I don't need to go to you and beg you for corporate charity. You see, I don't want to wear people suffering. I want to consume their tragedy. I don't want to trample on their dreams with my shoes. Let's create a world where the products that we make, the products that we buy, the economies that we build, make sure that no woman, child shall be for sale, because I want to live in a world for dignity. Thank you very much. Thank you.